Hello, this is a slide presentation about the future of religion. In this presentation, I would like to introduce my own theory about the evolution of religious systems and their possible future developments. At the cornerstone of my approach to religion lies the idea that any religious system, either archaic or modern, Eastern or Western, theistic or non-theistic, is primarily a semantic structure that creates a net of meanings whose origin is not available to ordinary human beings. Inasmuch as religion generates a semantic field, its most important task is to preserve original teachings and to transmit it to the following generations. In order to accomplish this task, religions develop sacred scriptures and sacred traditions. Both sacred scriptures and sacred traditions constitute the backbone of any religious systems whose development depends on the interaction between these two components. In the course of its evolution and independently of its doctrines and practices, a religious system goes through a certain number of stages or phases. Based on a certain correlation between scriptures and tradition, I distinguish 6 such stages: early or formative, orthodox, classical, reformist, critical, and finally post-critical. The early or formative phase in the evolution of religious system contributes to the formation of the scriptural canon and the establishment of the sacred tradition. The orthodox phase cements traditional foundations of religion by fighting heretical movements and their alternative scriptural interpretations. The classical phase reformulates sacred tradition by adding new interpretations of sacred texts. Reformists, on the contrary, purify tradition from the accumulated interpretations in order to get back to the core of sacred teachings and restore the original faith. Let's take as examples 3 major world religions: Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. Examples of their orthodox phase would be Theravada Buddhism, Orthodox Christianity, and Shia Islam. Classical phases would be represented by Mahayana Buddhism, Catholic Christianity, and Sunni Islam. Reformist phases of these religions would be Vajrayana Buddhism, Protestant Christianity, and Wahhabi Islam. In the course of its evolution, a religious system undergoes 2 types of crises: structural and systemic. Structural crisis is a crisis that challenges the sacred tradition, and it is usually resolved by the appearance of new divisions or denominations within the existing religion. In contrast to the structural crisis that questions tradition, the systemic crisis of religion poses a challenge to the foundation of the system itself, namely its sacred scriptures. Systemic crisis is usually resolved by the establishment of new religious systems with their own scriptural texts in the midst of their mother faiths. The systemic crisis marks the critical phase of a mother religion that gives birth to new religious movements. The appearance of Buddhism and Jainism from Hinduism, the rise of Christianity in the midst of Judaism, the emergence of the Baha'i faith from Islam provide pre-modern as well as modern examples of such developments. According to my theory, the European Enlightenment of the 18th century marks the beginning of the systemic crisis of Christianity. The Enlightenment ideology questioned the validity of Christian scriptures in many different ways, including atheism and deism. Furthermore, in the following 2 centuries, the ideology of the Enlightenment spread around the globe and affected all major religions of the world. As a result, in my opinion, in the 21st century we find ourselves in a unique situation of a global crisis of religion and spirituality. To conclude, let me point out that, as we know from history, any systemic crisis of religion is resolved by the establishment of new faiths. That is why, in my view, we have such an outpouring of alternative spiritualities at the present time. As we also know from history, after giving birth to new religious movements, old religions do not deteriorate, but on the contrary renew and reconfirm their foundations. The birth of a new religious movement from its mother faith sparks competition between the two, which is vital and healthy for both traditions. As a result, age-long religions flourish alongside their younger counterparts by reorganizing their sacred tradition and restoring the authority of primary scriptures. So my prognosis for the future of religion is both positive and bright. Religion will experience a series of revivals and will flourish for centuries to come. Thank you for listening.